Control what you can, accept what you can't. This simple but staggering idea from Marcus Aurelius has shaped minds for 2,000 years. Imagine standing at the edge of chaos, whether it's a crumbling empire or your own overwhelming day, and choosing calm over panic, action over despair. That's the power of Stoicism, not some dusty philosophy, but a survival toolkit for modern life. Think about the last time you faced a challenge that felt impossible. Maybe it was a work deadline, a personal setback, or even just the weight of everyday stress. What if you had the mental discipline to meet it head-on, not with frustration, but with unshakable focus? That's what we're diving into today, 20 Stoic rules for aggressive self-discipline that don't just help you endure life, they help you dominate it. This isn't about grinding yourself into exhaustion or white-knuckling your way through misery. Real discipline, the Stoic way, is about clarity. It's recognizing that between what happens to you and how you respond, there's a gap, and in that gap lies your power. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of history's greatest teachers, put it bluntly: first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. No excuses, no illusions, just the raw commitment to show up as the person you decide to be. And that's where most of us stumble. We want growth without the grind, success without the sacrifice. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that true freedom, the kind that lets you sleep soundly in a storm, comes from mastering yourself first. So why aggressive self-discipline? Because half measures won't cut it. The world doesn't reward lukewarm effort. Whether you're building a business, a relationship, or a stronger mind, hesitation is the enemy. The rules we're about to explore aren't gentle suggestions. They're battle-tested principles from emperors, warriors, and thinkers who faced worse than you ever will. They're about training yourself to crave hard work, to find joy in the struggle, and to turn obstacles into fuel. By the end of this, you'll have a blueprint for relentless progress, no talent or luck required. Just the willingness to look in the mirror and ask, am I holding myself back? Then do what it takes to fix it. How often do you catch yourself frustrated over things you can't change? The traffic jam that makes you late, the rude comment from a stranger, even the weather ruining your plans. We burn so much energy fighting what we'll never control. That's where the Stoic dichotomy of control cuts through the noise. Epictetus laid it out plainly: some things are within our power while others are not. Your opinions, your actions, your effort, those belong to you. Everything else, let it go. Think about the last time you were stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic. You could scream at the windshield, grip the steering wheel until your knuckles turn white, or you could accept it, not with resignation but with strategy. Use that time to listen to an audiobook, call a friend, or just breathe. The traffic won't move faster because you're angry, but your day, that changes entirely based on how you respond. The Stoics weren't preaching passivity, they were teaching precision. Redirect your focus like a laser onto what you can influence, your next move, your attitude, your growth. Here's the challenge: pick one thing today that's been draining you, something entirely outside your control. Maybe it's a family member's stubbornness or a project delay at work. Now ask yourself, what would it look like if I stopped resisting this and poured that energy into something I can change? That's the pivot point. That's where discipline begins. Because mastering yourself starts with knowing where to draw the line between the battles worth fighting and the ones that only exhaust you. The world will always throw chaos your way. Your power lies in choosing where to stand. Seneca put it best: difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Think about that for a second. When was the last time you grew without struggle? Real growth, the kind that reshapes who you are, doesn't come from comfort. It comes from leaning into the grind, the discomfort, the things that make you want to quit. The Stoics didn't just endure hardship, they sought it out. Cold showers before dawn, fasting when food was plentiful, sleeping on hard floors by choice. Why? Because they knew comfort is the enemy of progress. Take modern fitness. You don't build muscle by lifting what's easy. You tear fibers by pushing past your limits. Same with your mind, that project at work that feels overwhelming. The conversation you've been avoiding, those are your weights. Every time you dodge discomfort, you're skipping reps in the gym of resilience. But here's the secret: discomfort is a signal, not a stop sign. It's your brain flashing growth opportunity in neon letters. Start small. Take one cold shower this week. Wake up 30 minutes earlier to meditate. Say no to that extra scroll through social media and pick up a book instead. These aren't punishments, they're training. Each time you choose the harder path, you're rewiring your brain to associate discomfort with progress. And when real challenges hit, a job loss, a health scare, a betrayal, you won't crumble. You'll have calluses on your mind. So ask yourself, what comfort zone have you been coddling? Is it the snooze button, the avoidance of tough conversations, that dream you keep putting off because it feels too big? Whatever it is, today's the day to lean in. Not because it's easy, but because you're stronger than you think. The Stoics didn't wait for life to force growth on them, they chased it. Will you? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That unsettling truth is the heart of negative visualization, one of the most powerful Stoic exercises for cultivating gratitude and resilience. Picture this: instead of dreading loss, you confront it head-on. You wake up tomorrow and your car is gone, your job vanishes, the people you love most are no longer there. Sit with that ache for a moment, not to torture yourself, but to uncover something profound, the hidden value of what you already have. This practice isn't about pessimism, it's about clarity. The Stoics called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. By mentally rehearsing loss, you strip away the illusion of permanence. Take your morning coffee ritual. It's easy to sip mindlessly, barely tasting it. But what if today was the last time you'd ever drink it? Suddenly, the warmth of the cup, the rich aroma, they're not mundane. They're gifts. That's the alchemy of negative visualization. It transforms ordinary moments into treasures. Consider someone who survived a layoff. At first, they're crushed, but months later, they often say the same thing. Losing that job forced me to see how much I took for granted. The camaraderie, the purpose, even the routine. Now imagine doing that before disaster strikes. When you mentally walk through losing your health, you start eating better. When you visualize a loved one's absence, you put down your phone and really listen. The Stoics weren't morbid, they were strategic. By facing the temporary nature of everything, you stop postponing joy. Try this tonight. As you turn off the lights, ask yourself, what if I never got to experience this again? The pillow under your head, the hum of the fan, the quiet safety of your home. Notice how your grip on gratitude tightens. The goal isn't to live in fear, but to live awake. Because here's the paradox: when you stop assuming tomorrow is guaranteed, today becomes infinitely richer. So tell me, what's something so ordinary you've stopped seeing it? And what would change if you knew it could disappear? Epictetus dropped a truth bomb 2,000 years ago that still shatters modern anxiety. Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. In other words, focus on your effort, not the outcome. We live in a world obsessed with results. Likes on a post, promotions at work, numbers on a scale. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that obsessing over outcomes is like trying to control the wind. You can't command the storm, but you can adjust your sails. Take studying for an exam. Most students torture themselves imagining the grade. Will it be an A or a crushing C? But here's the shift. What if you poured that same energy into the process itself? 2 hours of deep focus without distractions, active recall instead of passive highlighting. The Stoic approach isn't about not caring whether you pass or fail. It's about caring more about what you can actually influence, the quality of your preparation. Because here's the secret: when you master the effort, the results often follow. And if they don't, you walk away knowing you left nothing on the table. This isn't just theory. Think about an athlete training for the Olympics. They can't guarantee a gold medal. Judges, competitors, even weather can interfere. But they can control showing up at dawn, nailing each rep and refining their technique. The Stoic athlete doesn't fixate on the podium, they fall in love with the grind. That's the mindset shift. Society tells you to chase trophies. Stoicism teaches you to chase the kind of effort that makes trophies irrelevant. So here's your challenge. Pick one goal you've been stressing over. Maybe it's landing a client, getting fit, or repairing a relationship. Now strip away the outcome. What would it look like to focus purely on the effort? If it's the client, maybe it's 3 genuine outreach calls a day without obsessing over replies. If it's fitness, perhaps it's committing to daily movement regardless of the scale. The moment you detach from results, you reclaim your power, because effort isn't just a means to an end, it's the foundation of character, and that's something no outcome can ever take from you. Seneca once wrote that without reflection, we stumble through life like sleepwalkers, never learning, never growing. His solution: a simple but transformative habit, morning and evening reflection. Picture this: before the chaos of the day begins, you sit with a journal and ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be today? Then, as night falls, you revisit that question: did I live up to my own standards? This wasn't just philosophical musing for Seneca, it was a daily ritual. The Stoics called it prosaic, the practice of attention, and here's the kicker: it takes less than 5 minutes. Think about how most of us start and end our days, scrolling through notifications first thing in the morning, numbing out with screens before bed. We're reactive, not intentional. But imagine carving out just 2 pockets of stillness, one to set your compass, the other to course correct. The morning question primes you for purpose. Maybe today you choose patience over irritation, courage over comfort. The evening question isn't about guilt, it's about clarity. Where did I let distractions win? Where did I rise to the challenge? This isn't self-help fluff. It's the difference between drifting and steering. Here's how to make it tangible. Grab any notebook, no fancy journals required. At dawn, write one sentence: today I will fill in the blank with something actionable. Listen more than I speak, tackle the hardest task first, or breathe before reacting. At night, answer 2 questions. What did I do well? Celebrate the tiny wins. Maybe you resisted gossip or finally started that project. Then ask, what needs improvement? Be honest but kind. Did you snap at your partner, procrastinate on a promise? The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Consider a surgeon reviewing their incisions or a chef tasting every dish before service. They're not judging, they're refining. Your life deserves the same scrutiny. A teacher who journals might realize she's been rushing through student questions. A parent notices he's been physically present but mentally absent. These aren't failures, they're data points, and here's the magic: when you spot a pattern, you can change it. One executive client of mine discovered through evening reflections that his worst decisions came after skipping lunch. Solution: a standing midday meal. No grand overhaul, just a tweak born of attention. So tonight, before you reach for your phone, try this. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Ask yourself, did today move me forward or hold me back? Then tomorrow morning, before the world demands your attention, decide, what's one way I'll be better today than I was yesterday? That's the Stoic secret. Growth isn't about dramatic transformations. It's about daily, deliberate steps, and the journal, that's your mirror, not to shame you, but to show you who you're becoming. You are not guaranteed tomorrow. That blunt truth isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to wake you up. The Stoics called it Memento Mori, remember you must die. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Not as a morbid fixation, but as a lens to sharpen your focus. Imagine holding an hourglass with your name on it, watching the sand slip through. Would you waste time on petty arguments? Would you delay that dream for someday? Or would you start living with the urgency of someone who knows the clock is ticking? Think about how we treat vacations. When you have just 3 days in a new city, every minute counts. You research the best cafes, map out the museums, savor every sunset because you know time is limited. Now flip that mindset to your entire life. The colleague who annoys you, the project you've been postponing, the childhood friend you keep meaning to call. What changes if you treat today like it's one of your last? That's the power of Memento Mori. It's not about fear, it's about liberation. The trivial falls away, and what remains is what truly matters. Consider Steve Jobs' famous Stanford commencement speech. After his cancer diagnosis, he said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." That's Stoicism in action. Death isn't a shadow to run from, it's a spotlight, revealing where to direct your energy. The entrepreneur who stops chasing vanity metrics and builds something meaningful. The parent who puts down their phone to really listen to their child's silly story. Even the small choices, like choosing a salad over junk food because you respect your body's limited time. Here's the challenge. Pick one area of your life where you've been coasting. Maybe it's a relationship you've neglected, a skill you've told yourself you'll learn when things calm down, or even just the way you rush through meals without tasting them. Now ask, if I knew this was my last year, how would I do this differently? Not with grand gestures, but with presence. The Stoics didn't use mortality to fuel reckless abandon. They used it to fuel intention. Because when you stop pretending you have forever, you start acting like today counts, and that's when real living begins. Marcus Aurelius faced rebellion, plague, and betrayal during his reign. Yet his journal reveals not despair, but a relentless refrain. The obstacle becomes the way. This wasn't blind optimism, it was tactical. When barbarians threatened Rome's borders, he didn't just defend the empire, he used the crisis to streamline its defenses. When his co-emperor died, leaving him alone to govern, he turned isolation into focus. Every setback became a setup. That's the essence of Rule 7. Obstacles aren't roadblocks, they're raw materials. Consider Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher exiled to a barren island. While others saw banishment as the end, he saw it as a classroom. Without distractions, he refined his philosophy. Without comforts, he proved resilience could be cultivated anywhere. His students traveled through danger to hear him lecture among the rocks. Today, his exile is remembered not as a punishment, but as the birthplace of some of Stoicism's most enduring lessons. Now apply that lens to modern struggles. A job rejection isn't just a no, it's feedback to sharpen your skills. A failed project reveals gaps in your planning. Even traffic jams train patience. The key lies in a simple mental flip. Ask not, why is this happening to me, but what can this teach me? A tech entrepreneur client of mine hit every investor's no until he realized each rejection exposed flaws in his pitch. He rebuilt his presentation from scratch and within months secured triple his original funding. The obstacles didn't disappear, they became stepping stones. Here's how to practice this today. Identify one current frustration, maybe a strained relationship, a financial pinch, or a plateau in your fitness. Now complete this sentence. This challenge is secretly helping me by. Perhaps the argument with your partner is revealing communication patterns to fix. The tight budget is forcing creativity with resources. The workout plateau is signaling it's time to change your routine. The Stoics didn't wait for smooth seas to sail. They learned to build ships from the wreckage. Your obstacles aren't in your way, they are the way. The only question left is, what will you construct with them? Epictetus cut straight to the point. we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak. That's not just clever wordplay, it's a survival strategy. The Stoics saw chatter as a leak in the boat of your attention. Every unnecessary word, every piece of gossip, every reactive opinion drains energy you could have used to observe, learn, and act with precision. Fast forward to today, where we drown in takes, tweets, and 24-hour outrage cycles. The average person consumes enough words in a month to fill an entire library, yet how much of it actually improves their life? Think about the last heated debate you witnessed online. 2 people typing furiously, neither reading the other's replies, both walking away more entrenched in their views. Now imagine flipping that script. What if, instead of reloading your verbal ammunition, you just paused, not to craft a comeback, but to truly hear? The Stoics called this hesychia, the discipline of stillness. It's why Seneca spent hours in silence even amid Rome's chaos, why Marcus Aurelius wrote entire passages about biting his tongue in court. They weren't advocating muteness, they were training for impact. Here's the modern test. Next conversation, wait 3 full seconds before responding. Not 2, 3. That tiny gap works like a filter. It catches the reactive jab, the half-formed thought, that adds nothing. In that space, you might notice something startling, how often others aren't listening at all, just waiting for their turn to talk. That's your edge. The person who masters silence holds the rarest currency in our noisy world, presence. Recall a time silence saved you. Maybe it was biting your tongue during a partner's venting session, only to realize they needed empathy, not solutions. Or sitting quietly in a negotiation, letting the other side fill the void with concessions. Even nature understands this power. Trees don't argue about how to grow. They listen to the sun, the soil, the seasons, and respond accordingly. Your words are tools. Like any tool, their value lies not in how often you use them, but in how deliberately. So today, let your first instinct be to absorb, not react. The world won't stop talking, but you'll start hearing what really matters. Seneca once warned that a life without clear principles is like setting sail without a destination. You'll drift wherever the wind blows, even onto rocks. The Stoics didn't leave their values to chance. They carved them into stone, then built their days around them. Your values aren't just nice ideas, they're your compass in chaos. When everything else is uncertain, when opportunities tempt you to compromise or setbacks shake your confidence, they're the lines you refuse to cross. Take a surgeon scrubbing in for a high-stakes operation. Their hands don't shake because they've rehearsed every motion 1,000 times, but deeper than skill is something unshakable, the oath they took to prioritize life above all else. That's the power of a defined value system. It turns abstract ideals into automatic decisions. The Stoic version, Marcus Aurelius reviewing his principles each morning. Today, I choose justice over convenience. Courage over comfort. He didn't just admire those traits, he programmed them into his nervous system. Now picture a modern crossroads. You're offered a promotion, but taking it means overseeing layoffs you disagree with. Or a friend asks you to bend the truth to cover for them. These aren't just choices, they're tests. Without clear values, you'll rationalize just this once. Everyone does it, but with them, the path becomes obvious even when it's hard. A client of mine, a finance executive, walked away from a 7-figure deal because the terms required hiding risks from retirees. His team called him reckless. He slept like a rock. That's the Stoic advantage. When you know what you stand for, sacrifice feels like integrity. Here's your challenge. Grab a pen and finish this sentence. No matter what, I will never, maybe it's betray a confidence or let fear dictate my choices. Those are your non-negotiables. Now write 2 more. Keep them short, stark, and unforgettable. Tape them to your bathroom mirror. The Stoics didn't craft elaborate manifestos. Their rules fit on a single scroll. Speak truth, endure hardship, serve others. Simple words, ironclad boundaries, because when the storm hits, you won't have time to deliberate. You'll default to what you've rehearsed, so ask yourself, what 3 lines will you never cross, and more importantly, what will you become by holding that line? Complaining is a surrender of power. Epictetus put it bluntly, what upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about things. Every time you vocalize frustration about traffic, weather, or someone else's behavior, you're handing the reins of your mood to forces outside your control. The Stoics didn't just avoid complaints, they saw them as theft of time, energy, and focus that could have been spent creating solutions. Take the ancient story of Zeno, the founder of Stoicism. After losing his entire fortune in a shipwreck, he didn't rail against the gods or drown in self-pity. He walked into Athens and stumbled upon a bookseller reading about Socrates. That moment of curiosity, not complaint, set him on a path that would shape philosophy for centuries. Now imagine if he'd spent years lamenting his lost wealth. History would have forgotten him. Instead, he asked, "What now?" and built a legacy from the wreckage. Here's a modern experiment. Try a complaint-free day. Not just externally, no venting to coworkers about the slow elevator, but internally too. Catch yourself when your mind starts drafting that mental grievance about your boss or the long line at the coffee shop. Then pivot. Ask, what's one action I can take right now to improve this? Maybe it's using the elevator wait to practice deep breathing, or sending a concise email to address the work issue. The shift isn't about pretending things are perfect. It's about reclaiming agency. Consider a hospital study where nurses implemented a no-complaining rule during shifts. Not only did morale improve, but patient care metrics rose. Why? The energy previously spent on griping was redirected to proactive problem solving. That's the hidden cost of complaints. They're not just words. They're tiny withdrawals from your reservoir of initiative. So here's the challenge. Pick one recurring complaint in your life. Maybe it's your noisy neighbors or the endless stream of work emails. Now brainstorm 3 ways to address it, not just endure it. Could you invest in noise-canceling headphones, automate email filters? The moment you switch from "this is unfair" to "here's what I can do," you're no longer a passenger in your life. You're steering, and that's where real discipline lives, not in silencing your voice, but in using it to build rather than blame. Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his private journal, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." That paradox still stings today. How many hours have you wasted worrying what others think? The coworker who rolls their eyes at your idea, the stranger who judges your outfit, even the anonymous troll on your latest post. We give them rent-free space in our minds. The Stoics called this prosauch, the discipline of attention, not to silence criticism, but to question its power over you. Take social media likes, that dopamine hit when a post goes viral. The crushing silence when another flops, both are illusions. The same people applauding you today will scroll past you tomorrow. Seneca watched Roman crowds cheer champions in the arena one day and forget their names the next. His lesson: regard applause as ephemeral as the echo in an empty theater. Modern validation is just as fleeting. A musician friend spent years chasing viral fame, measuring her worth by streams and shares. Then one day, she played an unreleased song for a hospice patient who wept and whispered that felt like sunlight. She told me, "In that moment, I finally understood I'd been feeding the wrong audience." This isn't about rejecting feedback. The Stoics sharpened their swords with criticism, but only from trusted mentors. Epictetus drew a razor-sharp line. If someone told you that your breath stank, wouldn't you rush to fix it? Yet if they say your character needs work, you take offense. The difference: one helps you grow, the other seeks to control you. Imagine a sculptor. She listens when her teacher points out a flaw in her technique. But she ignores the passerby who sneers. Art is pointless. Mastery requires discernment, not deafness. So here's the litmus test. Next time praise or blame lands in your lap, ask, does this person share my values? A chef shouldn't wait a food critic's review the same as a toddler's whine about vegetables. Yet we often treat all opinions as equal. Your boss's critique on a project worth dissecting. Your aunt's unsolicited advice on your life choices, file it under noise. Now turn the question inward. Whose judgment truly matters to you? Not the voices you tolerate, but the ones that shape you. Maybe it's a childhood coach who saw your potential, or your younger self staring back from old photos. Write that name down, tape it to your workstation, because when the crowd's roar fades, as it always does, that's the voice worth hearing. Seneca warned that an unexamined impulse is like handing a loaded weapon to a stranger. You have no idea what damage it might do. Think about the last time you fired off a text in anger, splurged on something you didn't need, or agreed to a commitment you instantly regretted. Those weren't decisions, they were reflexes. The Stoics saw this as the opposite of discipline. Real strength isn't in reacting faster, it's in choosing when not to react at all. Picture two versions of yourself at a crossroads. One acts on autopilot, driven by fleeting emotions or external pressures. The other pauses, breathes, and asks, does this align with who I'm trying to become? That split second of deliberation is where growth lies. Ancient Stoics practiced this through a ritual called Prosaic, a moment of attention before action. Marcus Aurelius would write reminders like, first, ask what the nature of the thing is you're about to do, not is it urgent or will people approve. But what is this fundamentally? Modern psychology backs this up. Studies show that introducing even a 10-second delay between impulse and action can reduce regrettable decisions by nearly 40%. A CEO client of mine keeps a bronze turtle on his desk not for decor, but as a tactile reminder. When tensions rise in meetings, he picks it up, feeling its weight, while silently running through Stoic questions. Is this necessary? Is it kind? Will it matter in a week? Those extra seconds transform heated debates into productive dialogues. Now apply this to your own life. Recall a recent choice you'd like to revisit, maybe snapping at a loved one or skipping the gym for another Netflix episode. Rewind that moment. What if you'd inserted a pause, not overthinking, but simply creating space between stimulus and response? That gap is where your power resides. The Stoics didn't eliminate emotions, they built guardrails. Anger could be channeled into justice. Desire could fuel purposeful action, but only after passing through the checkpoint of reason. So here's your challenge. For the next 24 hours, carry a small object, a coin, a ring, anything pocket-sized. Each time you're about to make a decision, from replying to an email to ordering dessert, hold it first. Use those seconds to ask Seneca's question, is this serving my higher purpose or just my immediate mood? You'll start noticing something profound. Most impulses fade when exposed to light. And the ones that remain, those are the ones worth acting on. Epictetus put it plainly, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. That single sentence flips modern life on its head. Think about how many of your daily struggles stem not from actual needs, but from manufactured desires, the upgrade you don't require, the event you feel obligated to attend, the clutter you keep just in case. Stoic minimalism isn't about barren rooms or extreme deprivation. It's about cutting the invisible strings that turn objects and obligations into puppeteers of your time and attention. Take the ancient practice of ascesis, deliberate simplicity. The Stoics would periodically wear rough clothing, eat plain food, or sleep on the floor, not as punishment but as resistance training against comfort seduction. Fast forward to today. Imagine checking your phone first thing in the morning and finding no notifications, no emails pleading for responses, no social media comparisons, just quiet. That's the modern equivalent of Stoic asceticism, creating space between you and the endless pull of more. Consider the CEO who wears the same outfit daily to conserve decision energy, or the artist who keeps only the tools essential to her craft. They're not sacrificing, they're strategizing. Every no to non-essentials is a yes to what truly matters. A client of mine cleared his schedule of all standing meetings, no more default yeses. Within weeks, his team became more self-sufficient, and he reclaimed 15 hours for deep work. The clutter wasn't in his office, it was in his calendar. Here's the razor test. Hold up an item from your desk, a commitment from your week, even a thought that loops in your mind. Ask, if this disappeared, would I feel lighter or panicked? The chains Epictetus warned about aren't made of steel. They're made of shoulds and just one mores. So today, pick one anchor to cut. Unsubscribe from that newsletter you never read. Decline the coffee date that feels like an obligation. Delete the app that fragments your focus. Freedom isn't found in accumulation, it's found in the courage to let go. Because the fewer things you're clinging to, the more hands you have free to grasp what's truly worth holding. Marcus Aurelius scribbled a game-changing exercise in his private journal. Strip away the story you're telling yourself and see things as they truly are. That's not passive observation, it's active mental judo. The Stoics called it fantasiae, the art of pulling apart your automatic interpretations to reveal raw reality beneath them. Think about how two people can sit in the same traffic jam, one white-knuckling the wheel, muttering about wasted time, the other relaxed with an audiobook, grateful for unexpected reading minutes. The traffic hasn't changed, the stories have. Take public speaking, a fear so common it outranks death in some surveys. Strip away the assumptions and what's really happening. You're standing, breathing, sharing ideas with other humans who have also tripped on sidewalks and sent embarrassing emails. The spotlight effect, that crippling sense everyone notices your every flaw, is a fiction. Studies prove audiences miss most nervous tics unless they're explicitly pointed out. The Stoic speaker doesn't deny their racing heart, they reframe it. This isn't fear, it's energy waiting to be directed. Consider a tech CEO client of mine who dreaded investor meetings. His assumption, they'll smell my insecurity. We dissected that. Truth, investors back competence, not swagger. His nervous thoroughness was actually an asset. It showed he'd vetted every risk. 6 months later, he closed his biggest round yet by leaning into that authenticity. The obstacle wasn't the room, it was the script he'd written about it. Here's the practice. Pick one current frustration, a delayed flight, a critical coworker, even a rainy weekend. Now dissect it like a Stoic. What facts are undeniable? The flight's departure time, the coworker's exact words, the raindrops themselves, everything else. This always happens to me, they're out to get me, the universe is ruining my plans, is narrative. Optional fiction, the power lies in asking, what if I chose a different story? Maybe the delay is forced rest you'd never take voluntarily. The criticism highlights blind spots you needed to see. The rain, nature's way of gifting you a guilt-free indoor day, your turn. What assumption is currently tinting your world? Is it that success must look a certain way? That someone else's progress means yours is lacking. Grab that thought by the throat and demand its credentials, because perception isn't just what you see, it's what you decide to notice. And that's a muscle anyone can strengthen. Seneca called anger brief insanity, a fire that burns the hand of whoever holds it. The Stoics didn't see forgiveness as weakness or forgetting, they saw it as reclaiming sovereignty over your own peace. Picture a prisoner who keeps rattling the bars of their cell, screaming at the guard only to realize the door's been open all along. That's what resentment does. It convinces you you're trapped while the key sits in your pocket. Take Nelson Mandela's 27 years in prison. When he walked free, he didn't demand revenge against his captors. He invited them to the negotiating table. not because he'd forgotten the suffering, but because he understood something the Stoics preached 2 millennia earlier. Carrying anger is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Mandela's forgiveness wasn't absolution for his oppressors, it was oxygen for his own future. Now zoom into everyday life, that co-worker who took credit for your idea last month. The relative who always dismisses your choices. Every time you replay that moment in your head, you're handing them a remote control to your emotions. A client once told me she kept a grudge list in her journal: names, dates, offenses. When we calculated the hours spent ruminating, she gasped, "I've given them months of my life without their even asking." That's the hidden tax of resentment. It charges compound interest on your attention. Here's the Stoic refrain: forgiveness isn't about them, it's about clearing space in your mental warehouse. Imagine your mind as a ship. Every grudge is an anchor you're dragging. Cut 1, and suddenly you move faster. Cut 10, and you're gliding. The person who wronged you might never change, but your relationship to the pain can. So this week, pick one name, someone whose actions still itch under your skin. Not the worst offender, just the one that comes up most often in your mental reruns. Then try this exercise. Write their name on a scrap of paper, and beneath it, "This no longer owns real estate in my mind." Light a match and watch it burn. The physical act matters. It signals to your brain that the chapter's closed. You're not excusing their behavior, you're evicting it from your head. Because the Stoics knew something neuroscience now confirms. When you release resentment, you're not losing a battle. You're winning back your life. Marcus Aurelius began each dawn with a ritual so simple yet profound it could transform your life. He listed reasons to be grateful. Not for grand fortunes or rare luck, but for the ordinary miracles we barely notice. The bread on his table, the friend who listened, even the breath in his lungs. He wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." That's the Stoic secret to joy, not chasing endless more, but uncovering the infinite value in what's already here. Think about your morning routine. Do you check your phone first, absorbing the world's chaos before your feet even hit the floor? Or do you anchor yourself in what's unshakable? A tech executive I coached replaced his scrolling habit with 60 seconds of gratitude, not for promotions or profits, but for the chair supporting his body, the quiet before his family woke, the clean water from his tap. Within weeks, he told me, I stopped feeling like I was racing toward some distant finish line. The joy was in the run itself. That's the alchemy of gratitude. It turns the mundane into the sacred. Now try this tonight before sleep. Name 3 tiny victories no one else might notice. Maybe you resisted the urge to interrupt in a meeting. Maybe you chose vegetables over chips at lunch. Or perhaps you simply noticed the way sunlight painted your wall at golden hour. These aren't trivial, they're proof you're awake to your own life. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum in reverse. Instead of imagining losses to appreciate what you have, you spotlight present gifts before they're gone. Consider the research on gratitude journaling. Participants who listed small positives daily reported 25% higher happiness levels than those tracking hassles. But here's what most miss: it's not about the counting, it's about the seeing. A barista once told me her 3 wins included remembering a regular's order without asking and catching herself before snapping at a rude customer. Before this practice, she said, those moments would have blurred into just another shift. Gratitude sharpens your focus like a microscope. Suddenly, the invisible details of your life come into breathtaking clarity. So here's your challenge. Pick one object in your home you touch daily: a toothbrush, a coffee mug, your doorknob. Tomorrow, pause for 5 seconds when you use it. Feel its weight, its texture, its purpose. That's Stoic joy, not in owning more, but in truly noticing what you already hold. Because the miracle isn't that these things exist. The miracle is that you get to experience them at all. Epictetus watched a student storm into class, fists clenched after a street argument. His response: "Wait, let's count to 100. Not to suppress the anger, but to let it cool like molten metal before shaping it into something useful. That's the Stoic pause in action, the deliberate gap between feeling and action where discipline lives. Modern neuroscience confirms this ancient wisdom. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, fires impulses faster than your rational cortex can respond. But here's the twist: that delay, even just 10 seconds, is where your power lies. Picture a typical work clash. Your colleague takes credit for your idea in a meeting. Your face flushes, your pulse spikes, the urge to call them out burns in your throat. Now freeze that moment. The Stoic doesn't deny the outrage, they interrogate it. Will this reaction improve the situation or just my ego? History remembers Abraham Lincoln not for his temper, but for the hot letters he wrote to critics and never sent. He'd stash them in a drawer, revisit them days later, and usually toss them. The emotion was real, the response was intentional. Here's why this matters: every knee-jerk reaction trains your brain to default to impulsivity. Like a social media algorithm favoring outrage, the more you indulge instant reactions, the harder they become to resist. A hospital study found that nurses who practiced a 5-minute journaling break after stressful incidents reported 40% fewer conflicts with colleagues. Not because the stressors disappeared, but because the space between trigger and action widened. So here's your challenge. Next time anger or anxiety flares, whether it's a snarky email or a partner's careless remark, set a timer. 10 minutes, breathe, walk around the block. The ancient Stoics would even hold a pebble in their palm as a physical reminder. You are not the emotion, you are the hand that chooses whether to drop it or carry it. In that space, something remarkable happens. The sharp edges soften, perspective seeps in. What felt like an emergency becomes manageable, and sometimes you realize the offense was just a misunderstanding amplified by haste. The goal isn't to become emotionless, it's to become responsive rather than reactive, because in that pause, you're no longer at the mercy of whatever life throws at you. You're the sculptor, not the clay, and that's where true discipline begins, not in controlling what you feel, but in mastering what you do with those feelings. Seneca called adversity the fire that forges the strongest souls, not a curse to avoid, but a training ground to seek. The Stoics didn't wait for hardship to find them. They courted it voluntarily, like athletes conditioning for a championship. Fasting when food was abundant, sleeping on hard floors despite having soft beds, even wearing thin robes in winter, these weren't acts of self-punishment. They were resistance training for resilience. Think of it like vaccination, exposing yourself to controlled doses of discomfort to build immunity against life's inevitable blows. Consider the modern parallel in fitness. No one builds endurance by only walking on flat terrain. Runners seek hills, swimmers practice in choppy water, and weightlifters progressively overload their muscles. The principle is identical. Growth demands intentional friction. A tech entrepreneur I know schedules chaos days periods where he deliberately overloads his schedule with back-to-back meetings and complex decisions. It's not about masochism, he told me. When a real crisis hits, my mind doesn't panic, it recognizes the terrain. Now zoom out to your own life. What's the equivalent of those Stoic exercises for you? Maybe it's volunteering for a project at work that stretches your skills, even if failure is possible, or committing to a month of early mornings to write that book you've been postponing. One client of mine, terrified of public speaking, joined a debate club not to win, but to desensitize herself to the fear. Within 6 months, she was leading company-wide presentations. The obstacle didn't shrink, her capacity expanded. Here's the litmus test. What makes your palms sweat just thinking about it? Is it having a tough conversation you've avoided? Starting a side hustle despite the risk? Or something as simple as turning off notifications for a weekend to face the quiet. The Stoics knew something modern science confirms. Voluntary discomfort rewires your brain's threat perception. The cold shower you dread becomes invigorating. The rejection you feared loses its sting. So this week, design your own challenge. Not a grand, life-upending trial, just one small act that makes your heart race a little. It could be as straightforward as asking for feedback on a weakness, or as bold as deleting your most used app for 7 days. The goal isn't to suffer. It's to discover what Seneca knew. Difficulty is the whetstone that sharpens your edge, and the more you seek it, the less it seeks you. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. That razor-sharp command cuts to the heart of Stoic leadership. Your life isn't just for you, it's a lesson plan. Every choice, from how you handle stress to how you treat the barista who messes up your order, is either a masterclass in integrity or a cautionary tale. The Stoics didn't preach from pulpits, they led with their footsteps. Imagine a parent telling their child to be patient while constantly interrupting others, or a CEO demanding teamwork but hoarding credit. Hypocrisy isn't just ineffective, it's corrosive. Take the ancient teacher Musonius Rufus. When exiled to a barren island, he didn't just lecture about resilience, he turned the desolate rocks into a school. His students didn't follow him because of his words, they braved dangerous journeys to watch him live what he taught. Fast forward to modern parenting. Studies show children absorb far more from what they observe than what they're told. A father who claims honesty matters but fudges numbers on taxes. That's the lesson that sticks. The mother who stays calm during a cancelled flight. That's the unspoken tutorial on adaptability. Now zoom into your own sphere of influence, whether you're mentoring an intern, coaching a soccer team, or simply existing in a community. Someone is always watching, not in a paranoid sense, but in a constructive one. A client once shared how her habit of journaling each morning, something she did purely for herself, inspired her teenage daughter to start documenting her own thoughts. No speeches, no pressure, just silent consistency that spoke louder than any lecture. Here's the litmus test. At the end of each day, ask yourself, if someone had shadowed me today, what would they have learned? Not from your highlight reels, but from your unguarded moments, the way you handled criticism, the jokes you laughed at, even the sigh you didn't think anyone heard. Because legacy isn't built in grand declarations, it's etched in the 1,000 tiny choices no one applauds. The Stoics knew this. They lived as if their every action were a brushstroke on the mural of their character, knowing others might one day study its colors. So consider this. What's one small, consistent action you can take this week that embodies who you aspire to be? Maybe it's admitting mistakes openly instead of covering them, or choosing kindness when anonymity would let you get away with rudeness. Don't do it for the audience, do it for the art, because the world doesn't need more influencers shouting values, it needs more ancestors living them. And that's a role anyone can audition for, starting today. Seneca once wrote that a life without purpose is like a ship without a rudder drifting aimlessly, vulnerable to every storm. But when you anchor your discipline to something greater than yourself, something remarkable happens. The cold mornings become bearable because you're training to build a business that employs others. The rejection stings less because you're writing the book that might save someone's life. The Stoics didn't just preach self-mastery for personal gain, they saw it as the foundation for service. Marcus Aurelius, despite the weight of an empire on his shoulders, would remind himself daily, "What I do today must matter to those who will come after me." Consider Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz. In the depths of the camp, he noticed a chilling pattern. Those who lost sight of a purpose beyond survival often withered first. So he did something radical. He began counseling fellow prisoners, helping them find meaning in their suffering. One man lived to see his daughter again. Another clung to the hope of finishing a scientific manuscript, Frankl's own purpose to rewrite his lost book and share the lesson that would become man's search for meaning. His discipline wasn't just about enduring, it was about ensuring his pain could one day ease others. Now ask yourself, who benefits when you grow? Maybe it's your children who will inherit your resilience. Your team who will thrive under your calm leadership, or strangers you'll never meet like the nurse who stayed up late to study because your story inspired her. A client of mine, a recovering addict, now runs marathons not for medals, but to show kids in his old neighborhood that escape is possible. Every mile he logs is a message in a bottle. If I did it, you can too. Here's the Stoic twist. Purpose isn't something you find, it's something you build through daily action. The teacher who grades papers after a long day isn't just checking boxes, she's shaping minds that will outlive her. The entrepreneur working weekends isn't chasing vanity metrics, he's creating systems that'll feed families for decades. Even small acts, listening deeply, choosing integrity when no one's watching, ripple outward in ways you'll never fully see. So as we close these 20 rules, hold this question close. What's the bigger story your discipline is telling? Not just about who you are, but about the world you're helping to build. Because the Stoics knew the ultimate truth, the strongest chains aren't forged from iron, but from meaning. And once you've bound your will to a cause greater than yourself, no force on earth can break you. 20 rules, each one a stepping stone across the river of self-mastery. From controlling what you can to leaning into discomfort, from morning reflections to transforming obstacles into fuel. This isn't just philosophy, it's a battle plan for the life you're meant to lead. The Stoics didn't hand us dusty theories, they gave us tools. Tools forged in the fires of exile, war, and personal loss, tested by emperors and slaves alike. And here's the promise woven through all 20. Growth isn't about luck, talent, or circumstance. It's about showing up day after day and choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. Think of these rules as a ladder. You don't need to scale every rung at once. Start with one. Maybe it's the practice of negative visualization, pausing tonight to truly see the ordinary gifts you've been overlooking. Or perhaps it's the discipline of silence, letting your next conversation be guided by listening rather than waiting to speak. Progress doesn't demand perfection. It asks for consistency. A client once told me he began with just Rule 5, focusing on effort over outcomes, and within months, his entire relationship with work shifted. I stopped measuring my worth by promotions, he said, and started finding joy in the craft itself. That's the alchemy of Stoicism. Small, deliberate actions compound into unshakable character. Epictetus, the former slave who became one of history's greatest teachers, left us with this torch to carry forward. No great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. Your discipline is that fig tree. The blossoms might seem insignificant at first, the cold shower, the journal entry, the deep breath before reacting, but beneath the surface, roots are spreading. Strength is building, and one day you'll taste the fruit. So here's your invitation. Pick one rule from these 20 that resonates most. Write it on your mirror, set it as your phone's lock screen, or whisper it to yourself each morning. Then act on it not just today, but relentlessly until it becomes second nature. And when you're ready, the next rule will be waiting. The Stoic path isn't about speed, it's about direction. Every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory over the person you used to be. If this journey speaks to you, join our community of modern Stoics, hit subscribe, and let's keep climbing together. Because the world doesn't need more spectators, it needs more warriors of wisdom, turning obstacles into opportunities, one disciplined choice at a time. Your legacy starts now.